it seems like when people come together, magic happens. Today the fashionable thing is ceremonies. Going to ceremonies, sound healings. That it's all about. That's the real payload. Not so much the sound healing, but the coming together of the people. You know what I'm saying? That we need community. We can't live without community. And what should that community look like? Who should make up it? And, I've been working in the corporate arena for 25, 30 years. And that's a whole different culture. The values and so on and so forth. And I said, is that my community? And they went, no, it never was. I mean, I would do these talks, for the last 30 years to some pretty high-powered executives. And I would say, if they really knew who I was, they would never have me here,
All right, welcome to the Psychedelic Spotlight Podcast. Happy to have with me Paul Karasik from the Psychedelic Institute. Paul, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here.
So there's a lot to talk about. We both just got back from Psychedelic Science 2023 in Denver, the MAPS conference. It was a lot of energy expenditure. Did you have a good time?
Oh, it was amazing. It was really, I think you didn't even have to go to the sessions.
Yeah.
The energy was so, didn't you feel, just excitement.
There's always so many conversations to have, so many different people to meet, so many new connections to make.
Yeah.
And I always have a hard time sleeping after those conferences because I'm so wound up from
Definitely. Oh, there was definitely like an integration for a day after.
Absolutely.
It was just like,
And you are getting ready for your own journey once more into the conference space.
Yeah.
Through the Psychedelic Institute.
Never really left it, but bringing the expertise that I've developed over the years to the psychedelic space. Yeah.
I just meant 1 year after the first conference. So tell us about what exactly is the presenting entity for the conference, which is the Psychedelic Institute, and we're talking about the Awakening Conference, Awakening of Consciousness Conference 2023.
Yeah, Psychedelic Institute is really came out of, it's funny, you go up to at the conference, you reference the conference, everybody's personal story is so integrated into what they're doing, whatever business they're doing. And I've spoken to maybe 100 or 200 speakers and companies over the last couple months even. And, a lot of people are like, I'm a steel worker, I grew up and then I found I got it in the union. There's no personal story there. You know what I mean? At that event, everybody's story was integrated into what they were doing. Their own awakening, right? And so the Psychedelic Institute is no stranger to that whole concept. It began really, we talked about this before, in the 60s with my awakening and my first awakening. And then sort of got buried in the idea of bringing people together, education, in the grind of making it. Making it as in music business, making it in as a speaker, as a consultant, getting lost in that maze of achievement, right?
Yeah, the race.
It's a maze. Once you get in there, because there's always another thing.
Yeah,
there's always another achievement. And, I wound down on that. By all means, people say, oh, you're very successful. And I never felt successful. And it didn't matter, how many books I wrote, how many videos I did, how many training programs I developed, how many stages I was on, how many, oh, you were so good. There was a hole and an emptiness. And that was after my awakening. So I think there's a real moral and story in there about what psychedelics can do, but also what they can't do.
So how did the Psychedelic Institute begin? Where,
Well,
where did you put that together?
Let me go. Stop to chapter 1. Let me get to the end of the story. So, going through my own thing in a year that I think a lot of people did. I don't know if you did. I think we talked about it actually, but I hadn't scoped in on this whole idea. Matthew, I'm telling you, I've spoken to probably 50 or 100 people that have said all this in this timeline. It's either 2019 or 2020, everything changed. Mm-hmm. Like 2018, like before the pandemic, that there was this sort of change in life, a change in direction. Did we talk about that with you?
A little bit, yeah. Not publicly before.
Did you change in that? Was there a major change in that section?
Well, yeah. This is all about you today.
Okay. No, I'm just doing data. I think that's a data point for me.
I think I find that I find relevance in that idea. Absolutely. Resonance for me.
And so I did too. And I really bottomed out and had some health crises, and that were, needed, super attention, that type of thing. Had years ago when I grew up, they would call it a nervous breakdown. And you don't hear that anymore. It's sort of like not fashionable.
Okay.
The fashionable thing to call it today is dark night of the soul.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'll hear, people on the path. I'm sure you've heard it. I know you've been through it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And most people, hit different, times like that in their life.
Okay.
And really said, what do I want to do? What do I want to, how do I want to contribute? How do I want to take all the stuff that I seem to be preparing for in this lifetime, and now use it for the right purposes, and not just to, self-serve, and that was really, and that's where the Psychedelic Institute came from. And I started to evaluate if I want to do something that's going to impact people, what does it have to include, and what would it look like? And first of all, we were zoomed out of our buttholes, and so what came up for me during that time period, as the Psychedelic Institute kind of simmered, right, and gestated, was we got to be we got to be with each other. Mm-hmm. We got to connect. This is not a virtual experience life.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so, and I've been doing meetings and events for 40 years, 50 years. I did my first event at 9. No, I did. No, this is true. Yeah. There was a kid in school with cerebral palsy, and it was beautiful. Jackie Shapiro, I remember him, and he was a great guy. But walking and talking and everything, and so we did a puppet show to raise money. I wrote it.
Amazing.
We made the puppets. We sold the tickets. And we even got written up in the newspaper. We raised like $20.
Wow.
Which was a lot of money in those days.
Of course. Yeah.
So, and at a nickel a ticket. No, I'm not. I'm serious. Yeah. No, at a nickel a ticket, you got to sell a lot of tickets, door to door. Yeah. And which is what we did. So I've been doing it a long time, and it seems like when people come together, magic happens. Today the fashionable thing is ceremonies. Going to ceremonies, sound healings. That it's all about. That's the real payload. Not so much the sound healing, but the coming together of the people. You know what I'm saying? That we need community. Mm-hmm. We can't live without community. Mm-hmm. And what should that community look like? Who should make up it? And, I've been working in the corporate arena for 25, 30 years. And that's a whole different culture. The values and so on and so forth. And I said, is that my community? And I went, no, it never was. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would do these talks, for the last 30 years to some pretty high-powered executives. And I would say, if they really knew who I was, they would never have me here. I can't reveal anything. The fact that
That's really how you felt?
Yeah. I mean, I would never say, giving a talk to sales executives or leaders, And when I was an alcoholic, I would never say that.
Right.
I would never say, when I used to do a lot of bad drugs.
Probably a lot of people in the room that could relate, though.
I'm sure, but I just didn't. I felt no. I don't want to sully the water. Like, why talk about it?
Right. Well,
my diet, is weird according to that. I'm going to these Ruth Chris steaks dinners, and I'm a vegan and a vegetarian, so and you don't want to say that because they look at, oh my God, I've been an endurance athlete for 35, 40 years, distant, marathon, ultra, 50 mile, 50K. That offends people, I don't even want to tell them that because they're like, that'll kill your knees, and I'm like, no, my knees are great. They still are, by the way.
Beautiful knees.
My knees have been done great. I really haven't. There was no real physical damage at all from all that running.
That's great.
So I said, what is that community going to look like? And I began getting back into psychedelics myself, and listening to the medicine, and really, really diving into the medicine and saying, which means listening to medicine is just, let's put it this way, you don't need the medicine, but listening to that higher voice, right? Is it about me, like when I wanted to be a rock and roll star? Is it about contributing? Is it, you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
What is it about?
Yeah.
And that's the sensibilities that really shaped the Psychedelic Institute. One, we need community. Two, we need psychedelic healing.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe in that, and because the miracles are there. And after so many years of thinking there was something wrong with me because I didn't see the spirituality in things like the Hindu stuff and all those traditions, and I had studied it all, the chanting, and the bhakti this and shakti that, and gurus, and I saw that stuff. I saw that there was something really wrong with it. Like for one thing, all the gurus were doing bad stuff. Let's start with that. So you're telling me how to live, and meanwhile you're doing the nasty in the back room with the disciples, and that was every one of them.
You're hearkening back to the Haight-Ashbury?
Well, Haight-Ashbury or today.
Uh-huh.
There was a guru in town this week spewing absolute inane, and 4,000 people are in the room. A friend of mine came over the other night, and he said, I went to it, and he's got some awareness. He's not asleep. He's not a robot. He goes, I went there, and I was just like, he said, I walked out. So it's not a time thing, and it's traditional. I'm just saying, I started to look at, well, how are we going to heal? And it just seemed to me, as my deepening into psychedelics and really looking at it from a very different way from the 60s, very different way, all through a viewpoint of healing, completely, not any,
currently, yeah.
Seeing the devastation of mental illness all around us. Going through what I went through, and we all continue to struggle with anxiety. Will I won, I didn't, tomorrow, yesterday, did I say the right thing? Where's my girlfriend? How come I'm not a millionaire? And all of the anguish that comes with that. And so for me, psychedelics were the awakening to, we have to, what's going to help this epidemic of mental illness? And I would ask you, You know, what's working out there other than psychedelics?
Well, one of the things we hear that can help in many aspects of where we need help is community. I want to clarify. You laid out 3 tenets that sort of constitute the Psychedelic Institute's mission: community, healing, and education.
Right.
Before we get too far off of community, I think it's one of the most important things we can discuss, because this is going to be, and I want to make sure our time here is clarifies. There's a conference coming up called the Awakening of Consciousness Conference, and it's at the end of July, 28 and 29, correct?
Yeah.
And it's here in Los Angeles, and it is a community gathering. So this is the physical manifestation of the ideal that you're espousing about community and how to source the community, right? And so let's spend some time with community here. One of the things I took away from the Psychedelic Science Conference was that there were people who identify as members of certain communities that felt as if it was harder for their communities to be represented there, first and foremost because of the barrier to entry with the price point that was set. Meaning there was a constituency that conference was geared towards still, and those are individuals who really could afford the ticket to get in, right? Now, once a person was in there, whether it was through their own money, whether it was through scholarship or whatever, then they could engage in very meaningful conversation and connection. So we know that space can facilitate incredible growth, incredible networking, incredible community. Now, how do we continue to balance what it means to have a conference, which is a business, and to create this community space where we're facilitating the exchange of information, which can lead to healing and empowerment and progress? I'd like to know, from your point of view as the organizer, what goes into building the community.
Well, I've been an educator for 25 years, and actually probably closer to 35, for adults, educating adults, training, speaking, and so on. And one of the things that I always did, and we continue to do, and what MAPS did, by the way, is have a sliding scale. So I used to have a lot of educational resources, videos, audios. Now all that stuff's digital, but we had books, we had workbooks, we had all kinds of things, resources that really help people to move forward with what they wanted to do. And I would also say this, and some of our packages were $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. If you want this, if you want to grow as a person, I will find it. We'll work it out. Just come up here. We'll work it out. We'll figure out a way. And I did that for the last 35 or 40 years. So we always worked it out. If you want this, and you know that there's stuff in here, even in one book on one page, that's going to help you progress in what you're doing, that's going to have tremendous value, just talk to us. And that's kind of what MAPS did. I mean, I think they said, if you can't do it, we have community scholarships.
Right.
They offered booths at a very low rate. Actually, I think still more expensive than our booths, but at a low rate, and they gave 2 tickets. So they were saying, if you were a community business, we have community. And you're asking me how I address it. It's in a similar kind of that's the way I've addressed it.
Yeah.
So,
well, not only
we have community booths. I know the point you're making. We have community booths that would say, and I've been on the phone, trust me, with 10 or 20 different community vendors over the last month or two, and just let's work it out. And some, it's still too big. They're at that big beginning stage. I can't. And this type of thing. But it's not the money. It's not the money, because you want to do it, look, we'll work it out. Because my philosophy hasn't changed about that. Also at the event, the conference room where we have programs and the agenda includes things like ibogaine and addiction, psychotherapy and psychedelics. We did, at the last event you were at, we had high dose mushrooms, which is barely even talked about. We have retreat centers, how to evaluate retreat centers if you're thinking about doing a ceremony, how to prepare for a ceremony, follow-up stuff. Incredible array of education. But, for a lot of people in the community, they don't need that. They don't need that. And that's a paid, ticketed thing. So the rest of our event, they could attend for free. There's no cost. And that includes music, art, the exhibits, food vendors, community, to your point. They're going to get it all. They just won't get that. So, so we've maintained this kind of like free zone, if you will, for community. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't know if there's any one answer to it, but I'm saying I agree with you that I thought the ticket price was pretty high.
Well, it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all thing when you're organizing an event where you're attracting such a vast array of people, And I wouldn't expect that even an institution as venerated and long-standing as MAPS would have it perfectly figured out. I'm just saying, I was just asking you about what you're doing to create the community and what the community looks like to you.
Well, but you referenced the financial
I was
issue.
illustrating that one of the points of consideration for you as an event planner must be, how do we make this an equitable situation?
Yeah, and I think part of the thing is the message of psychedelics is community, and you're part of that community.
Can you clarify that for me?
It's people get the first time somebody takes a psychedelic, a lot of times it's in a community setting, either at an event or it's at a concert. It's at somebody's house with somebody else. Many times, I would say a great percentage of people, the first time they did something, it was given to them. It wasn't sold to them. It was community. It was, you're my friend. It was community. It was relationship.
Yeah, gotcha.
So it has a history of, it's a relatable thing. Yeah. Historically, it's been done in groups and in ceremony, and in this type of thing, and continues to be.
Yeah.
So it supports community.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
But I think that there's a real trap here, Matthew, and that's for me. And let me give you an example. If you center on the differences in the community, if that's what you focus on, we'll continue to have more differences with the different communities and the diversity.
Okay.
For example, if I say, well, queering psychedelics is really different than a straight psychedelic. Somebody does, it's a whole thing.
Okay.
So the longer I perpetrate and focus on the differences between us, the more there's going to be those differences.
Okay.
The more you say you're different than me because you do sex this way or have this kind of feeling, the more we're going to perpetrate that. And so we're going in a whole different direction. We don't even play the game that way. I've talked to event organizers and say, well, I need, at MAPS, big events, I have to find a black woman. I said, it's funny. She really felt that legally almost she had to do that. She had to bring that community in, or it wasn't going to be in. That's not how you bring community in, first of all. That's just, what do you call it? When you throw something, it's just, it doesn't really matter. It's a gesture. But is it really embracing that community as one with me? That we're together. No, it's creating more separation from that community. It's saying, you're so different, we have to give you a name and give you a label and separate us from us, and that's why we're bringing you there. And I said to her, it's funny, I didn't look at any of that stuff in this year's conference on July 28th and 29th in Los Angeles. You never said it, so I have to say it here. July 28th, 29th in Los Angeles, 33 speakers, maybe 35. I don't know, really including workshop leaders. I would say we have, I haven't counted, but I'll go back and count. I would say we have half women without even trying.
Well, tell me about the process of building.
Look at other events. It's 80% men. And a lot of it is white men. And the only time it's not is when they throw a bone and say, we need this type of person. We need a gay person. We need this kind. We need a Jew. We need whatever you want to put in there. That doesn't create, that didn't bring people together. That's separating people.
So how'd you do this? How did you find a nice...
By creating the energy of just community, and not, how do you create community and then separate it and say, okay, we're all together. You know, it's like that old joke. Actually, I should redo it. You know, we're all together. We're all green. Okay, there's no difference. Whatever your sexual thing or your skin, we're all green. Okay, okay. The light green go over here, and the dark green. And that's what they're doing. You know, they're saying, you know, we're all together, but we're different. No, what I said, no, we're all together. We have indigenous people. Juanita, who's an incredible, gifted medium and ayahuasca server, you know her.
Yeah.
She's 50% Cheyenne. I didn't pick her because she's American Native. She grew up on a reservation.
Mm-hmm.
I just opened the door for community. So whatever your age, whatever your sex, whatever your color, whatever your background, we're doing it in a different way, you see.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it in a whole different way. And it happens that way. And she, you know, the other meeting planner was looking at me like, how'd you do that? I said, we have, I think, 5 Mexicans speaking, 3 to 5 for sure. Again, I just thought of another 100% American, Native American. We have all colors. No effort. There was no effort, Matthew. I'm telling you. It was just, as long as you perpetrate, we have to do sessions on diversity, you'll stay diverse. You'll say, and I don't want diversity, I want unity. Diversity, by definition, is saying we're separate.
Well, there's probably something to recognizing some of the social phenomena that happens in our world and the stratification of types of people. But this space, we're not focusing on that in this space. And I think it's wonderful that you've been able to pull a contingent of speakers and representatives together organically. Can you shine a little light on that process? Like, what's it been like for you to build the community and work with people like Flaco and work with people like Amir and bring this team together to make it all happen?
Yeah, you know a lot of the team. Yeah, I mean, so you know that what I'm saying is true. I don't think it's just the energy. I really don't think there was again, if you do it consciously, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about like representation. I'm just talking about like how do you find your crew?
Oh, yeah. You know, one of my old partners used to say, "You put the dog food out and see if they eat it." You know, that I hated that expression. By the way, I was people are a little bit better than dogs, aren't they, Dan?
Well, a lot of hungry dogs out there.
But that was his expression. Well, we'll just put the dog food out there and see if they. But you know, I'd say I was looking to people that had the calling.
You're in LA. You've been in LA for a long time.
Yeah, about 25.
Yeah, but you're from New York originally. Yeah. So coming out here, you've been able to your professional career was in a different arena, and you always had friends and loved ones in fringier spaces that you could continue to foster relationships with.
Well, I've been a musician my whole life. I played what would be called, you know, black music my whole life, you know. So I was always, you know, and that's a mixed crowd right there. So, I mean, I think if you're comfortable with, how do you find these people? It's a great question.
Yeah, how'd you find your tribe though? Like the people that you brought together to because you have a lot of people involved in making this happen. Well, I don't know.
You're one of those crowd. I mean, you and I are friends, and we don't have to play games. This is not a Senate hearing, I hope. I think it just happens organically when you put the right energy out.
Okay.
You know, I really do. You know, one of the things that psychedelics tells us is about the perfection of the universe. whether you do a microdose or you do a serious dose or you do an ibogaine or whatever it is, there's a hint in there that there's an underlying message that wherever you are right now is perfect. And that messaging, when we listen to it, when we meet people, now, some, they play this role, and some, in terms of the Psychedelic Institute, in terms of the community that we're forming. But people say, oh, I love your whole, how can I be part of the community? And I always go, you are. Whether you're in Paris or Amsterdam or, Montana or Idaho, wherever you are, if you're feeling this community, then you're in it. And then some people, when I say things like that, they really like it, and they go like, oh, I get it,
Yeah.
I really get it. And it's nice to hang out with other people that get it, that we can't keep slicing the pie. I don't want to rehash that stuff, but that we're all in this together, and we need each other. And that people start popping up. Isn't that the way it happens?
Yeah. Yeah, it can.
There's a certain magic quality to life, of wow,
Yeah.
It really is. And I mean, to me, you're a wow.
Well,
I really value our friendship, and
Thank you.
It goes beyond any of this stuff, and we talk at a very, very grounded level, and it's magical.
Let me parlay this idea into the topic of healing, because I think one of the things that I've seen in my life is where sometimes people have healing to do before they can experience the magic that we're talking about, as readily, right? That there are some things that need to be resolved or worked through in order to get to a place, even neurologically, right, that you can be open. Because when you're sick, or when you're in a state of perpetual fight or flight, or when you're traumatized and that's pervading your central nervous system, it's harder to see.
It's hard to feel the perfection.
It's harder
when you're
to feel
in pain,
right,
especially physically,
and abuse,
and suffering, and
your circumstances are more challenging and limiting than. So let's talk about healing and what healing means to you, and if you want to relate anything from your personal journey, and then what components of the conference, the Awakening Conference on July 28th and 29th, are dedicated towards the idea of healing and how that's manifest there.
Yeah, well, the healing and the education are obviously totally connected, but for me personally, it's, and you've heard at MAPS, I mean, it was every other speaker, from the platform. We're all damaged, you're damaged and I'm damaged, and it's to what degree? We've all been traumatized. Everybody's been beat up when they were babies, and some horrifically, and some less, but we're talking degree. And those patterns, and I love Gabor Mate's stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's the man on that stuff. I don't like to dive too deep with him because I don't see enough hope in him sometimes, but he really nails it as far as these patterns are embedded and they just keep repeating themselves, and you have to break that pattern, and that's you have to dewire it, and that's a big part of everybody's healing. Everybody's healing is to really see how specifically thinking patterns, which lead to all the other stuff, are so ineffective and useless, and it gets so boring. I'm sure you could relate to this because I know you. You break up with one girl, you get another girl exactly the same. Different version, different problem, new girlfriend. You think, oh, I'm going to start new and start fresh. And soon the same things start to appear, right? Of like dissatisfaction, judgment, one way or the other, that perfection all of a sudden, the shoes smell, the socks, like all of it, like in the first, and, I would have this like 2-year pattern, 1 to 2 years, sometimes one night, I'm historically not that great at relationships of that kind. And after a while you go like, wow, I'll never get out of this. And after I went through my own process of kind of making it in the outside world and then being crushed, I began to look deeper into that and say, I've got to go deeper. And that's when I decided to do ayahuasca in Costa Rica. And in 2020, I said, I can't do this anymore. That is literally the words. I just can't do this anymore. I can't. I don't want everything to be perfect, but I just can't do this anymore. All the fun is gone. All the fun is gone. And the healing happens, Awakening 2023. It happens when you wake up from the dream that this is real and that this is it. And everybody at MAPS that I met had that experience. Was that the healing? It was part of it, but it wasn't the healing. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It wasn't the complete process.
Yeah.
It was part of the process. So first is the awakening, but then you end up the same way if you're not understanding and observing and paying attention to your inner world, like real attention, like as much attention as you put towards the bass line on that new song you were recording and the EQ on it, and as much attention as you do to what you're going to eat for breakfast, and much attention to how you get dressed up to go out on a date, and a much attention to everything, the car you're going to buy and planning the trip you're going to do. Like, that's when the healing happens, when the focus is not on the external world, but the hellhole that we call our minds. And until that's the main focus of your getting up in the morning, you're screwed. The psychedelics, somebody asked me in an interview or on a call, they said, does psychedelics work? And I didn't even have to think about it. I said, no, they don't. They don't do anything unless you engage.
Yeah.
Yeah, you engage. I'm awake. Okay, you're awake. You get out of bed. Now what do you do? Well, that's what I'm talking about. And that's what the conference is about. So you come to sessions. The healing sessions are addiction, ibogaine, awakening, to your addiction, ayahuasca sessions on what's it like, how to prepare, people who've done many journeys in Peru and South America and can speak from great experience. And what is that awakening? What is that? What's the right way to get on the journey? We did this, I don't know if we're doing it this side. I have to look at the program, but how to prepare for a session. What kind of a psychedelic should you do? I want to awake. I'm sick of these patterns. I'm sick of my life just being one girlfriend after the next, one job after the next, one check after the next, one empty day after the next. I'm sick of it. And what's the way out for me? Should I go on a retreat? So we have a session on retreats. What is a retreat? I don't know anything about a retreat. Is it a cult? What do they do? What's the difference between that one and that one? should I do it in the States or go to, you know what I mean? Like things that, because in other words, people want not just the healing session, or, you know, I don't know how much healing gets done at a conference per se, although we did have some kind of traditional ceremonies out in the garden at the last event. And we're doing some sound healing, some meditation, and it's a cannabis-friendly space, which is really nice. And so we can do cannabis meditations and let people go really deep into that incredible medicine. I mean, you know, it's an incredible medicine. Not treated that way, unfortunately, but used properly. And so we're going to demonstrate that. And but it's, what's the road should I be on? You know, like, because each one is kind of a road. You know, there's a legal psychedelic called Amanita muscaria. It's the Alice in Wonderland mushroom with the red with the white dots. And somebody said, you know, I met one of our speakers who's a forager, and he, you know, brings him back, and he came over the other night, and it was like I was second grade again. You know, I mean, I thought I knew stuff. You know, I don't know nothing. You know, I mean, it was just like, and then what's that? And what's that chemical reaction? And how does it affect your sleep? And what's lucid dreaming? And, you know, it was just like exciting, you know, and is it the right thing for me? So I said, there's got to be other people out there in LA, or people, I'm sure people will fly into our event, and we're streaming it. We're streaming it internationally, that feel the same way as I do. You know, what's the right path for me? You know, is Amanita muscaria, is that, you know, it's legal. I can, you know, it has a lot of beneficial effects. Is that a right path for me? And so that's how we created the agenda, right? So that for the education. But I would say, you know, that's where the rubber meets the road on the healing. You know, for somebody to meet somebody they trust, a therapist, you know, that they really, you know, could trust and could go deeper into some of these things. They'll meet them at the event. You know, they've been living in an isolated world. They don't know the people you know. You know, and you know the people that I'm talking about that don't know the people like us, and they don't have access to them. That's part of diversity too, isn't it? That's part of diversity too. We need really rich people at these events, not just regular people and people that can't pay for tuitions. We need really rich. We need all diversity. That would include those. We need famous people at these events. I want, you know, we got a couple rappers coming to our thing. We have 2 world champion UFC fighters. They're going to talk about how it helped them perform at peak levels in terms of physically and in performance mode. We want. So everybody's got a different, you know, different path, right? You know, and the event is bringing those things together, but not in a linear form. You know what I mean? It's not like you get that there. You may get the healing just from listening to a speaker. I have. You probably have too, right?
Definitely.
I mean, you know, where you get goosebumps and you have a revelation, and you kind of almost check out. He goes away or she goes away, and you're like, wow, I just like notched up on that one. That was really cool. Yeah, you know, there's some books, and I was thinking my new book, I hope, which will be out shortly in the next couple months. There was a book called Power Now, and you read it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I did.
Eckhart Tolle. And I said to my brother once, who was like lived in India and all this kind of stuff, and you know, very spiritual, and you know, and he's my best friend, and but a good person to ask the question. I said, "What do you think of The Power Now?" And he said, "Well," he said, "it's the only book I ever read that I got high on."
Wow.
And he's right.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like somehow Tolle did that when you read the book, and that's why I see this new book, some people said that they responded in a similar kind of way, which is the most amazing compliment I could ever get.